I want to thank the county executive, chief of staff, the administration for the hard work they've put in the budget. I want to thank all the supervisors that spent a lot of time, a lot of hours in their own committees and the finance administration public hearings to do their due diligence in their work on this budget, to go through it, vet it, discuss it, ask questions, get answers, because I really believe that that's how you get informed, and the better informed you are, the better decision you make. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for their hard work and effort through this process. With that, I'll move on to supervisor reports. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thing with joint services, the outstanding piece, we always put a cap on what our insurance will come in at because we never get the final number before we have to have the budget in. And I just want to report to everybody that we had budgeted a cap of 10% and it came in below that. So our budget is fine as presented and everything's. Just want to let everybody know that that worked out well for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Any other supervisors have any reports? Seeing none, supervisor reports are closed. County Clerk?
County Executive Appointments, Aaron Strom to serve on the Kenosha County Local Emergency Planning Committee.
Refer to Judiciary and Law.
Sergeant Aaron Schaefer to serve on the Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission.
Refer to Public Works.
Policy Resolution, second reading to required from the Finance and Administration Committee, 2019 Kenosha County Budget.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you, and I would move the budget resolution.
A motion by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. Last night we talked a little bit about what's in the budget, and I left on your desk here this evening a summary of the high points of that budget. And as you can see, we are well below the 2% and below the resolution that we authorized some time ago, directing that the budget come in at no more than 2.5%. What we see here tonight was a authorization under 2%, and that was done at the Finance Committee after consultation with the executive as well as other members of the county board and supervisors as well. And we believe that this can be financed or we can carry this out under 2%, taking into account an adjustment with the vacancy adjustment increasing it from $500,000 to $665,500, and thus we are now under 2%. I think the other things there have been debated well. The health insurance issue is one which seems to come up and be of concern at county boards for many, many years. At least the last 15 to 20 years, it's been an issue of debate. We are now, of course, governed by whatever we do by the Federal Affordable Health Care Act. So when a proposal was brought to the committee as an alternative to what was presented by the administration in the budget, we had Mr. Cardamona as county executive review the county corporation council review that with the administration and the finance committee. It was his opinion that what had been proposed to the committee as an alternative did not comply with federal law. What we have presented does, so that if there's further discussion or further amendments to that, I would hope that you would also have a legal view opinion that what you're proposing is in conformity with federal laws so that we are not penalized. I think the other items here are self-explanatory in the summary that we've made. We've tried to emphasize economic development with substantial road improvements and new roads for the anticipated Foxconn and other development which will spin off into Kenosha County. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we urge you, the board, to adopt the budget as presented.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Discussion, Supervisor Nordigan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Supervisors may recall that I abstained earlier this year when the board was confirming an appointment to the library board. I stated at that point that as my wife is employed by the community library, felt it best to be cautious, which was why I abstained. I have consulted with Corporation Counsel on why it is not clear that there is an actual conflict which is substantial and material. I am also aware of the need to consider the public perception, and so I will not engage in any debate related to the library system, and when I cast my vote on the budget, I would ask that the record reflect that it includes an abstention on that portion of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nordigan. Supervisor Kubicki, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, I am the Executive Director of Kemper Center Incorporated. Since taking that position earlier this year, I have taken great care to remove myself from any county board or county board committee actions or discussions regarding not only Kemper Center Incorporated, but the Kemper property itself. I feel that it is appropriate to ensure that there is not even a perception of a conflict of interest. Accordingly, I'm advising that I will not engage in any debate related to Kemper, and that when I cast my vote in favor of this budget this evening, it includes an abstention on those portions involving appropriations for Kemper, and I ask that the record so reflect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Noodle, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me start by saying thank you to everyone involved in this process. Lots of work and time was spent by administration to prepare and present the proposed budget to us. Also, the same goes to all the members of this board for their involvement during this process. Along with the other supervisors, I was able to attend most of the budget presentation to the different committees and all of the budget hearing at Finance, where discussions, ideas, and changes were suggested. As a result, what we have in front of us today is a budget with a levy increase of less than 2%. This increase is less than what it was in the previous 4 years, which was 2.48, 2.50, 2.87, and 2.74%. I believe this was possible and is a reflection on the hard work, involvement, and cooperation of everyone on this board and administration. I look forward to work together to obtain the same or better results in the future. With this in mind, I will be supporting this year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Noodle. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank all the people and personnel that have been involved in the development of the budget. A lot of hard work. I don't want to repeat what others have said. Went into it. Excellent job with it. However, I do have some concerns. And primarily, it has to do in the area of bonding. When we realize and we talk a lot about all the economic development in our area, that's a fact. However, increasing long-term debt by 50% in 1 year seems tremendously irresponsible for this board to approve. And we talk about also, we have many needs, but there's also many wants that are currently tucked into the bonding that I don't necessarily see needing to be acted upon in this budget cycle. So as a result of that, and taking a look at some of the significant projects are up in my district, and I realize that. However, it's a prioritization. So tonight I am going to make a motion to remove from the budget the number of $5.5 million from bonding and bonding only, so that we can get, that is also an increase, but it is not a 50% increase. We should not be taking on substantial debt in times that are good, because when times are not good, we've got to pay those bills. We should pace ourselves a little bit more responsibly, and I think that a budget or the bonding area that I'm recommending is one that would be responsible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. So you have a motion on the floor to decrease bonding by $5.5 million, is that correct? Do I have a second?
Point of order.
State your point.
Is this the doing that on. This is the budget, the bond.
Right, right. I'll defer to Corporation Counsel on that. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to likewise probably have to defer to someone from budget. I will say that certainly it would be my belief that a modification to the bonding should be done when we are considering the bonding. That having been said, I don't know whether the budget itself reflects the expected bonding amount, and whether we would likewise have to amend the budget to reflect that.
So I guess if I could have somebody from the Finance Administration Department, Barna, would you please come up to the podium? Can you give some insight on this, please?
Sure. We have it, as you know, in the budget, $22.9 million in there for bonding, and that's, there's a list of projects that add up to that dollar amount. The initial resolution that'll be considered later takes into account other initial resolutions that have been passed in the past. So that reduces that $22.9 million down to the $14.9 million. If there's a desire to reduce the bonding for this year of $5.5 million, I believe it could be done as a budget adjustment, but it would have to be specific to certain projects. Otherwise, there's no direction to which projects we would be necessarily taking out.
Okay. So the maker of the motion, you understand that? Are you okay with deferring this to the bonding part of the portion of our?
Yes,
our
I have no
debate?
problem making
Okay.
that motion later.
Okay.
However, with the caveat that I'm not going to be picking and choosing which specific projects. That is the administration's job to do.
Correct. I
okay?
believe right now you'd have to do that on the second round.
Okay.
As we vote for bonding, you would not have
That's
to.
fine. Then I'll rescind
Is that
my
correct?
motion at this
Okay.
time, and I'll reserve it for later.
Okay, thank you. Is that correct, Barna? Do you? Okay, thank you. So let me clear the board, and that motion is rescinded at this time. Any other supervisors that would like to speak on the budget? Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, since the budget that we're about to vote on contains the bonding as is, the items that are in the bonding, I think you can't do it after the fact. Once you vote for the budget, you vote for the whole budget. Then what we're saying is that we're going to identify certain items to take out of the bottom before we vote on the bonding. Is that what we're saying?
No, what was told to me by the Finance Administration Department and the Budget Manager, Barna Bench, was that the motion that Supervisor Skalitsky made during the budget process, right now we're voting on the budget and then we'll vote separately on the bonding. Right now, Supervisor Skalitsky would have to come with a line item list of what he would want to make up this $5.5 million. He does not want to do that at this time. So when we get into the other discussion of the next resolution on the bonding of $14.910 million, he may bring that motion back up. That's what that's
Well,
about.
the point I'm making is that a lot of this bonding is related to, let's take highway, okay? If you take out, let's say you take out some of the roads, that affects the highway budget because the employees in the highway department, you can't support them if you take road money out. You can't support highway. You'd have to work on the highway budget and lay some people off because the highway budget depends on the road part. So you can't take the budget and take highways out. You'd have to identify what positions you want to eliminate in the highway to cover that.
Supervisor Frederick, I can appreciate your stance on this, but I do agree with what Barn is telling me. We're going to vote on the budget, and either we pass or the budget passes or fails, and if Supervisor Skalitsky wants to then come forward with some type of motion on the bonding, I'll let him do so. I'm not gonna convolute the two at the time.
Well, I would suggest then that he start looking at his budget and figure out which people he wants to lay off in the highway department. If we're going to take money out of the budget for highway purposes, then that highway budget is supported by revenue from highways that we have in the budget. I think it's like $7.2 million. So that's what I would suggest he start doing. done.
Yes.
I'm done.
Yes, I agree. That's enough of that. Thank you. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. I do agree with Supervisor Frederick. As I see the budget, it's a blueprint. We're authorizing certain projects, a certain number of employees, certain programs, and we are saying this is the way we're going to finance it. We're going to finance it by real estate taxes.
The motion's been rescinded. It has.
All right.
So
I'm just pointing out to you that if you adopt this budget as presented or as amended, that's what you are authorizing. And that's what I think the budget director stated to you. Perhaps he needs to state it again, or you can question him about it. But that was my understanding of what he said. If you pass the budget with all of these projects and all of these employees, you're saying to the public, this is what we intend to do. So that when we get to the next step, how do we finance? And we say,
right,
well,
right.
we're,
I understand, Supervisor.
Okay.
I get the process.
all right.
Barna, can you please come back up here? And maybe I'm not the only one that didn't understand this, but can you again, I guess, and Dawn from Ellers and Patty, the Director of Finance, why don't we just make it a threesome up there? Please clarify the issue at hand, because I do not want to go another second debating this, because everybody seems to be all over the board on this, and nobody has any clarification. So, go. Hold on one second.
There's a budget, and there's a budget, and which lists all the individual detailed projects, and then there's, in that budget, it states that those projects are to be funded by bonding. So if there's a motion made to reduce the amount of bonding, then it would be appropriate to do the budget amendment through the budget, through the first part, through a budget amendment. The second part is obviously the funding of that. If the budget's approved with that dollar amount of bonding in there, and if the adjustments made on the initial resolution, then it would be up to, and I'd have to confer with our Ellers financial consultant, then we'd have to determine which projects would not have sufficient funding to have those capital projects done.
Correct. So basically what you're telling me is Supervisor Skalitsky made a motion to decrease the bonding by $5.5 million. Whether it comes in the first part of this budget or whether it comes into the bonding, my understanding is if that would pass and it would decrease by $5.5 million, then we would have to modify the budget with the money we have. So it doesn't matter if it comes right now, or does it matter if it comes in the second part of the bonding portion of our, this is where I need clarification. This is where it seems like everybody's a little muddied the water on this situation, so.
I think my thinking would be, and if it's okay to present this, is if you adopt the budget with a capital budget of $22 million, and then you take action and you reduce the borrowing by $5 million, you have $5.5 million of capital projects that you've approved with no way to finance.
Okay. So basically, it needs to be done in this portion of the budget. Okay, well, I mean, obviously, this has never happened before since I've been here, so this is new ground. So, I mean, obviously, we want to get it right. That's the main objective. Patty, do you confirm that, or what's your
Yes, I agree with what Don said. I do think that the amendment needs to be made to the budget. However, I would ask for a little more clarification on exactly what types of projects, since the financing is actually in two parts. It's in 10-year notes and 20-year bonds. So we would need some direction as to what the thought behind the amendment is.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to clear the board. Supervisor Skalitsky, obviously you had the floor when you made this motion. You rescinded it. Do you want to now have the same motion because it's going to have to be done within the parameters of this part of the budget. Obviously, I'm going to need some clarification on what you would like the money, the less amount of money to come out of. I don't know if you're prepared to do that. So I would like you to speak on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will reintroduce the motion. And simply put is, I'm not here to pick and choose which projects because everybody will have a problem. That's the administration's job. What my job is to look out for the taxpayers and the financial health of this county. Part of that is taking on an excessive amount of long-term debt at a time when it's easy to think that we can pay this down. However, if we have another recession or market economic downturn, that becomes a much more challenging situation into the future. Now, many of projects, when a few years ago, it was passed from the standpoint of capital project for 5 years. That was one of my points I didn't like doing. I liked passing it year by year, but the majority spoke, the authorization was such, and thus that was also then a mandate to start spending on things that perhaps weren't needed, but wanted. A 50% increase in bonding from last year, which is fairly in line with what we've been doing as a county, probably within $1 million or so, is substantial. And so as a result of that, my motion, I didn't do the reverse math as far as how many percent over what last year's it would be, probably somewhere in the maybe 20%, okay? That's still an increase. Our revenue only went up 10%. We're spending 10% more, plus we're adding 50% in bonding. Now, I don't want to be disrespectful to drunken sailors because at least they stop spending when they run out of money. But we shouldn't be spending at that level. So I understand there are some critical capital projects, but there are wants and there are needs, and it's up to the administration to identify what those are. So my motion is just simply to remove $5.5 million from bonding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I have a second on that motion? There is a second, so I'm going to clear the board, and we're going to have discussion on the issue at hand on decreasing the budget $5.5 million. Supervisor Elvman, I seen you wanted to speak on.
I think I was first, correct?
Yes, you are, sir. That's why
Yes,
I
thank you.
pushed your button first.
I don't know where to start. You know, I've preached all along when I've been chairman of a committee to young supervisors, old supervisors at budget time. And I've said I've never seen it work on the eve to make a major proposal, to do your homework, do it during the proceedings, do it during all the discussions that go on. So this one, even where it's coming from, comes to me as a total shock. This is the most inappropriate motion I've heard in my 24 years here. To have the gall to say it's up to the administration to come up with this type of motion. It's up to them. This is coming from a supervisor that sat and voted positively on the Public Works budget. Do you realize that most of our bonding is in Public Works this year? Unanimously approved. Because these aren't wants, these are needs. The needs come as a function of how well Kenosha County is doing. Supervisor Sklisky mentioned financial health. Well, our financial health is very well, and it is because of the progressive growth of Kenosha County. Identifying needs. Some of these needs were put upon us with, say, the Foxconn project, and we are reacting to that. We are not going into debt. These are going to be positive things for the people of Kenosha County, and the people of Kenosha County know that. So if you sit here and come up with a proposal to reduce $5.5 million from bonding, at least do your homework. At least contact 10 other supervisors that will vote with you and say, here's what I'm looking at. I think we can reduce this. I think we can reduce this. I've never seen anything this poorly brought before the county board in all my time here. And if anyone votes for this with no information, with not one iota of a plan, I can't believe I heard this from a supervisor that's been here 8 or 10 years. I'm not sure how long. This one is ridiculous. Please do not support this. None of what we've got before us here was ill thought. This is very much planned, definitely not a want. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alberman. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
I would agree with Supervisor Elberman here, and to put it in different words, and I would ask the Corporation Counsel also for a legal opinion on this. I don't believe that you can lawfully delegate your legislative authority to the administration as a separate branch of government. In other words, we have gone through this budget. We have designated certain things to be done or purchased, and we've listed them, and we've listed some costs, be it over $800,000 for sheriff's vehicles or some $780,000 for Bristol entrance to the parking lot, 11 miles of county roads, et cetera, and there's a whole list on this budget summary and in your budget book. And then say to the administration, after we've adopted that list, you decide with less money which ones should be cut. That's the job of a legislature, to decide what programs you want, what items you want purchased, what highways you want developed, what roadways you want paved. You can't say to the administration, I don't believe legally. Well, here's $17 million. Go spend it as you please on capital projects. That's irresponsible. That's the job of the legislature, to tell the administration, we want these projects and we want them funded by tax dollars on the levy, go to the general fund, go to bonding. That's ours. We can't just say, well, fine, here's your money, we're going home early. If you want to do this, fine, but I want to know, and I think all of us want to know, what are you going to cut? Is it the Bristol roads, the road to the park there, the paving on the parking lot? Do you want to cut it down from 11 miles to 5 miles? Do you want the economic development to be cut? I mean, there's all kinds of things. Sheriff's vehicles, you want less cars? We postpone that till next year? That's our responsibility, and to merely suggest administration do it, and then when we don't like it, we'll pick it apart, not responsible. And I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's legal because I don't think you can delegate legislative authority to the executive. And I think as we as legislators have got to cherish that authority and use it wisely, not delegating it to someone else.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Corporation Counsel, do you have an opinion on that, please?
I would concur. The county executive and the administration proposes a budget. This board reviews it, and this board and only this board has the ability to authorize appropriations.
Okay. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I cannot accept this proposal that's been made by Supervisor Skolitsky. I can understand the motivation of wanting to reduce a certain amount of indebiture. I completely get that, but it's kind of long on generalities and short on specifics. I mean, we have a committee system specifically for this point. And when you're in committee, if there's a certain part of the budget you don't like, I don't want that quad axle dump. We don't need that. I don't want to pave 11 miles. I want to pave 7. That's fine. That is where the lifting gets done. So to come here on the eve of a budget and say, okay, let's just change this around, I don't have a plan, but this is what we're going to do, I think it's irresponsible. I don't think it's appropriate, and it shouldn't be talked about this. When it comes to our infrastructure, largely what we're talking about here, building roads, improvements, we have not only the responsibility of maintaining an increased amount of usage on our roads, but we have the need, as we go forward, to probably build additional lane and road miles. So when you're taking a look at this budget, which this specifically addresses, any attempt to handicap that, to crimp that, to make Kenosha County a less desirable place to work, do business, recreate, I just can't support it. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to know if you as a chair and if the Corporation Council, based on his answer to Supervisor Rose's question, are going to rule this motion out of order.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to give Supervisor Skalitsky the motion that's on the floor and give him the respect that he's due as a supervisor. He made a motion. We're going to see the motion through. We're going to vote on the motion, and that's how it's going to end.
Okay, through the chair to the Corporation Council, is that the right way to do it?
The chair has ruled that he is allowing the motion to proceed as being in order at this time.
Okay.
Are you good with that, Supervisor Gens?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Frederick.
Call for the question.
Question's been called to close debate. That is non-debatable. So we are going to, there is a second. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Gable. There is a motion on the floor to close debate, call the question. It is non-debatable. Yes if you're in favor, no if you're not. This is a roll call. So, yes, right now we are going to vote on the vote on Supervisor Skalitsky's motion on decreasing the bonding $5.5 million. So if you are in favor of decreasing the bonding $5.5 million, you will vote yes. If you're not, you have the floor.
I just have a question. This new mic is different than my old one, so. I just have a question of Corporation Counsel with his opinion on the last one. So what you're saying is this is not the county executive's budget, this is the county board's budget now that it's to the floor of the county board?
The administration proposes, the legislative body can debate it, amend it, pass it.
Okay, so is it our budget, since it came out of committee and now it's on the county board floor?
I guess I'm not understanding the question, Supervisor. I apologize.
Well, what I've heard that people say that this is the county executive's budget, so we shouldn't make any changes to it. Is this the county executive's budget, or is this the county board's budget that we can make changes to it?
At the risk of sounding like a lawyer answer, I think it's semantics, Supervisor. The budget was proposed by the county executive. You can argue that it's the executive's budget because he proposed it. That's not a legal question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a quick question for you. Do you think it would be appropriate for Supervisor Elverman to refer to the 4 no's as the 4 assholes that I just heard him call us? Do you think that's appropriate?
I don't think it's appropriate.
I don't think it is either, so maybe you could have words with him.
I will, thank you. I don't think we need any of that on the board floor here. Okay. Well, let's have cooler heads prevail here, okay? I'd appreciate a little bit of respect for every other supervisor, a little bit of professionalism as we go through this budget. I mean, this is ridiculous what I'm hearing here, so let's everybody treat everybody with the respect that they'd want to be treated with, please. Supervisor Ron Frederick, right now we're on the discussion of the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like every year we hit this road and I make the same statements. Probably 90%, living as a city supervisor, probably 90% of the outlay in this budget has not anything to do with the city. But I always support the budget because I support the budget as a county board supervisor for the betterment of Kenosha County. And I guess we're going down the same road we have for the last 4. I guess this will be year 5. And we'll get to the outlay and we'll go through this same thing. But I'll still stand by, I'll support this budget 100% because I think it's better for the citizens of Kenosha County, city and rural. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. I am seeing no other discussion in regards to this issue, so we are going to vote on the budget as presented by the Finance Administration Committee. There'll be a roll call vote. Yes, if you're in favor of the budget. No, if you're not. Yes, sir, it does, as amended by the Finance Administration Committee.
The issuance of not to exceed $14,910,000 general obligation promissory notes for budget capital projects, including road and highway improvements.
Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, and I would move the resolution.
Motion by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. This is the funding mechanism to finance what we have just authorized in the 2019 Kenosha County budget. The $14,800,000, together with other authorizations previously set forth and adopted by this board and which are listed in the report submitted by Ehlers, is the funding by which the capital projects will be done in 2019.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Any discussion on this resolution at hand? Any supervisors have any discussion in regards to this discussion? I mean, this resolution? At this time, I see none, so we're going to vote on this resolution. There'll be a roll call vote. Yes, if you are in favor. No, if you're not. Motion to adjourn by Supervisor Rodriguez and a second by Supervisor Sklitsky. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.